Hey Liz,
Hey, Ola.
remember when we naively thought we were not going to talk politics?
I know, right? We were so optimistic a few weeks ago. There's just no way to get around it, but I know we're going to talk about a few things today. I do want to say to our listeners, we did take a little bit of a break. It was kind of unplanned, but we're back now. So thank you for joining us. And I want to be honest, the most important topic we're going to talk about today is the state of breakfast and where are the eggs? Still a
Yes,
pressing concern.
yes, and the bacon too, because did you see that bacon is up 4.6%?
My God. My delicious breakfast. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. So the first topic we want to talk about today is not the eggs. We'll get to that. Is something that we have been seeing online that's beginning to make us a little worried. So obviously, Trump has spent the last 3 weeks doing everything he can to aggravate people who didn't vote for him, and even some who did. Just ask a farmer. And we are now in a situation where, as liberal voters, as liberal Americans, we're beginning to hear some rumblings of things that concern us. And it's this story and theme that's emerging that the Democrats are not doing enough to fight back against Trump and the Republicans. We're beginning to see this online. We're beginning to see this in conversations we're having. And it's a little concerning.
Yeah, it's like just the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Like newsflash, if you spend 4 years denigrating your own party as like do nothing people and, you know, doing everything you can to like only see their faults and hold them responsible for things that are not currently in their power, like you can't expect people to then vote for them like 4 years later. I don't understand what the liberal, lefty, progressive talk space is doing, but everything I've been seeing is just, blaming Chuck Schumer, blaming Jeffries, but like blaming Kamala Harris. And none of these people are currently in power. Well, okay, both of those two other people are in office, but someone like Harris is not even in power at all. Like, what do you expect them to do? They're in the minority. They don't have a court. They don't have a Congress. They don't have the White House. So what exactly do people want them to do?
I also struggle with this because I think that what happens is the media will put out statements from people like Chuck Schumer who are not the best spokespeople for this moment. I think we can agree that, if Chuck Schumer is the guy standing against the Republicans in the Senate and the House, that's not good. We need someone who's going to be a little more aggressive, push a little more. However, the thing that concerns me about this is while I agree on some level that the Democrats don't always have the best spokespeople, I see this going the way it went in 2024, where like this narrative is emerging. People start saying, oh, the Democrats aren't doing anything, even though there's nothing they can do. Really, they don't have the House, Senate, Supreme Court, or the White House. What are they supposed to do? They don't do the whatever it is people think they should be doing, which they can't. And then people get upset, and we have midterms coming next year. I mean, we can't forget that. If you want pushback to what the Republicans are doing, you have to give the other party at least one branch of government to be able to stand their ground. And I see that maybe not happening in 2026 if people start falling into this idea of Democrats aren't doing anything. And I think when you start defending the Democrats in DC to people, the response is, well, you don't want to hold them responsible for the mistakes they're making. You don't want to hold them accountable. You're too measured. You need to get out of the way and let progressives like push the agenda. And I'm thinking to myself, but what is it that they can do? They can't hold back any confirmations, really, truly. All they can do is talk on the floor, which they're doing. have protests outside office buildings, which they're doing, release statements, which they're doing. There's nothing else for them to do. I don't really know what the extra stuff is people are looking for.
Exactly. They're damned if they do and damned if they don't, because as you said, people were like, Democrats are not doing anything. So folks like Chuck Schumer went out and he just got panned as performative and, weak, right? But like this is the thing. The only thing they can do is be outraged and protest, right? And you don't get to then say that that is, performative if you're the ones asking for that. It's kind of like this like double speak where I don't understand what the Democratic electorate actually wants, because we just had about 4 years ago, we had 4 years of, constant outrage and constant prosecutions and subcommittees and committee hearings on all of the bullshit that the current president did. And y'all said that it was too much, that you were fatigued and that you didn't see the point of it all. That actually turned you off and
it
made
wasn't a
you
big
feel
deal.
like
It wasn't a big deal.
Right?
And I think that's true, because if people had seen 2017 through 2020 as a big deal, they would have shown up in November of last year to vote against it, right? There was some vibe of like, well, Trump can't be worse than Biden Harris.
Exactly.
And now it's funny to hear some of those same people asking Democrats to do something when, as we've repeated, there's nothing they can do. I saw a quote in The Guardian that said the Democrats in DC should pretend to be Mitch McConnell and sort of harass Republicans in the ways that Mitch McConnell would. I'm not sure that that's possible, to be honest.
The Democrats just can't like get away with the stuff because again, we have a media that, even though people think it's a liberal media, there's this like fucked up cognitive dissonance where like Democrats are held to a far higher standard on decency and decorum. Meanwhile, Republicans are just expected to, rip it up and throw it into the fire. Like nobody cares. Everybody knows that Trump is eventually going to like defy the federal judges, and people are just sort of like preemptively like getting themselves used to it, right? Meanwhile, a Democratic president would just never get away with that.
Yeah, I think there's some criticism to be had here for the Democrats. I don't want it to sound like we're endorsing everything they're doing. For example, Democrats voting to confirm Republican nominees in the Senate. To me, that's unnecessary, right? If they want to confirm, Marco Rubio for Secretary of State, let them. Why do you have to vote for that 99 to 0 or 99 to 1 or whatever it was? Why do all the Democrats have to sign off on that? But in their defense, that was week 1, It's now week 3. Things seem to be a little different. So again, we're not saying the Democrats are doing a perfect job. That's not possible. But I think we should give them some credit and also be realistic. As we keep saying, there's nothing they can do to stop this. All they can do is complain. The people we do have to rely on and should rely on are the judiciary, the judges, even the lawyers bringing cases. That is the branch of government for now that is able to push back against what's happening and is pushing back. Trump has had some losses. Some of his stuff has not passed, the birthright citizenship stuff, the spending freeze for the government. There have been judges who have pushed back against that and are able to stop those things from going through. Now, what's also a concern, and the thing that we should all be looking out for, is if Trump will follow what the judges say. And I think that is when Democrats can really sort of be kicked into action, right? Right now, what's happening is they issue an executive order, ACLU or someone brings up a lawsuit, a judge stops the executive order, we move on. The response to that has been JD Vance and people like Elon Musk saying, oh, judges shouldn't be able to tell the president what to do. Now we see what happens next, right? Is the president going to ignore the judges, which would be a constitutional crisis, or is he going to sort of step back and recalibrate? I think that is when we have to start pushing Democrats, because it's easy to say it's a constitutional crisis right now because Elon has his hands in like changing a website for the Veterans Administration. What will be a constitutional crisis is if or when the president ignores the judges, which it seems like they're setting him up to do.
Exactly. But, like what is frustrating to me is that, sure, Democrats shouldn't vote for Trump's picks because they're objectively underqualified or just straight up unqualified in the case of people like Hegseth and Patel. But like, let's actually look at the Democrats who've been voting along with the Republicans. And you have John Fetterman, who came from the progressives, right? And I feel like the progressives are not doing a lot of self-reflection on why so far some of the people they've given us, including Kristen Sinema and John Fetterman, have actually just ended up turning against the so-called progressive values that they claim to have.
Was Kristen Sinema a progressive?
She was, unfortunately.
Oh wow, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting. I did not know that. That's really interesting. I thought she was more moderate when she joined and then moved a little bit to the right. But yes, and agreed on Fetterman. Although, yeah, that's a good point, Ola.
I feel like we're not doing a reflection on like maybe we shouldn't always go for the most like charismatic, like burn shit down person, right? Like I know everybody hates incrementalism and, hates being in the middle ground, but there is something to be said for like those kind of people who come in rah, tend to be very disappointing because a lot of the time it's more tied to their ego and their sense of self-promotion and not necessarily what they want to do for the working class voters they claim to care about, right? I mean, Ro Khanna is supposed to be a progressive as well, and he missed a vote on subpoenaing Elon Musk to come talk to us about like all of the he's making, right? So like the problem I'm having is that a lot of this, criticism for the do nothing establishment Democrats is actually coming from the progressives, and it's like, well, but these are all your progressives. Like, what are they also doing? I mean, AOC is, she's doing
her best.
She's doing her thing, right? Jasmine Crockett is not necessarily a progressive. She's doing her thing. Pete Buttigieg, he's not even in office anymore, but like he's out there like trying to do his thing, right? But like let's tell the whole truth and not like make it seem like, oh, if only Democrats will go balls to the wall like we want them to do, everything is gonna be okay.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think what people see as incrementalism is just waiting for the moment. Some of the stuff Trump is doing right now is bad, but a lot of the complaints I'm seeing are people asking Democrats to protect them from consequences. And we talked about this after the election. We said, let Republicans cook. It's only been 3 weeks, and already the calls are, stop cooking, please turn off the stove, take the pot off the stove, stop it. It's interesting, isn't it? Because like some of the people who are the most vocal sort of pushing Democrats to do more were also very vocal last year before the election. And I'm going to be honest, there's a little part of me that wants us to allow the Republicans to do what they say they want to do. Did you see that YouGov poll today, not today, but this week, that said that 70% of people think that Trump is delivering on his campaign promises? I'm going to be honest, if I were taking that poll, I would agree. Now, whether or not those campaign promises are good for America is a different question.
Exactly. I was
But
going to
he's
say the question
delivering.
is not asking, like,
Right. He's
is
delivering
this
on
good
his
or bad?
promise. Right. Nobody,
Exactly.
you didn't ask me if it was good or bad. You said, is he doing what he said he would do? I would say yes, 100%. And this is what we tried to tell people last year when there was a chance to avoid this. And, people did what they had to do or stayed home. So I think it's very important as a country, while we ask Democrats to do something, like you said, let's also self reflect. Let's also ask ourselves, are there things we could have done differently? And let's do that. I really don't want the Democrats to lose the midterms over this storyline. It is early, obviously. It's still 2025. It's only month 2. But it bothered us, and we wanted to talk about this because it seemed like we were going to end up in a situation where people say Democrats aren't doing anything, so they refuse to show up for midterms next year, and then the Republicans get even more control in DC, and then people start complaining again that the Democrats aren't doing anything. So we're trying to avoid that cycle. We wanted to give you all a heads up. If you know a progressive or left-leaning voter in your life that is beginning to, repeat some of these talking points, please tell them to sit down, take a deep breath, and ask themselves exactly what it is they want to see that is not happening, and then let us know. We're happy to share that message if you can tell us what it is you want the Democrats to be doing that they're not doing.
Exactly. And also the people who progressive voters are listening to, I just want to beg them. I'm literally on my knees, just like, have the bigger picture in mind. Okay, there's some of these folks that I listen to, and I actually agree with them on most topics, like Democracy Now! And like Bad Faith podcast. Like, these are good progressive sources for you to like get your news and your viewpoints from. But what I'm seeing lately is, calling like Democrats losers and saying that they are deserving of their loss and that they're going to lose again. Like, this just feels like a self-fulfilling prophecy in which we just like self-victimize ourselves and then get surprised when the same talking points that we put out there gets like repeated back to us about Democrats. Because if you spend all of your time saying that Democrats were for genocide and you call them genocidal, and you don't put that in context of what Trump was going to do, which is now manifesting now, like, you're actually doing the people of Palestine a disservice, and you're doing your audience a disservice when they're listening to you. As of yesterday, he's put an arbitrary like deadline on the ceasefire that was hard won through a lot of progressives, right, actually pushing Joe Biden's administration. And I agree they should have done something like much sooner. That's not what we are litigating here. What we are litigating is that whatever progress that you wanted, no matter how late it came, Trump has now put an arbitrary deadline on it for Saturday, right? And if that deadline is not met, he has indicated that he's more than happy to have Bibi call off the whole ceasefire deal, okay? So, like, what have we achieved then if we not only did we ostracize like the liberals and the Democrats who at least were like willing to have you at the table advocating for the people of Palestine, not only have we like got them out of office, now we've voted in somebody who is going to undo all of that. Can we understand what we are doing going forward and just like have a like just some triaging? Oh my God, has nobody just heard of triage before?
I'm just gonna say it's triage for the people who are listening.
Triage, like have people not heard of like like
no, just
I don't
we
know,
gotta
algorithms
prioritize.
and
We
like
have to
decision
prioritize.
making trees? Have you not like heard of that? For the love of God.
Listen, I want to say this is not about this is not just about Gaza and like the people of Dearborn, Michigan. It sounds like that's who you're talking to.
I'm not talking to the people of Dearborn, Michigan, actually. I'm talking to the people who were telling the people of Dearborn, Michigan not to vote for Joe
Yes.
Biden and Kamala Harris.
Yes.
For the love of God, what were you thinking? Because now, like, trying to push Democrats to the left has like backfired all the way into a right-wing nightmare that we are all living now.
To sort of the bigger picture, there was a report in Axios that said that the Democrats are pissed at groups like Move On and Indivisible because they feel like these groups are really like stirring people up and making them call Democrats in DC. There was a report that Hakeem Jeffries was, quote, very frustrated at these groups because they're trying to stir up more confrontational opposition to Trump. Even though Jeffrey's spokesperson said that wasn't the case. Hakeem Jeffries can't say what he thinks. We will. It is frustrating to watch. It is frustrating to watch as people who are also liberals. It is frustrating to watch this. I struggle to understand what the ask is. It says here in this article that Indivisible, which is one of the groups that's sort of pushing this, is asking Democrats in DC to demand specific red lines before offering their vote to House Republicans on the budget. That seems reasonable. Sure. Let's threaten a government shutdown just like the Republicans do or did. However, we don't have a budget proposal yet, right? It's still early. We haven't, I say early, it's Republican, so who knows how long this will take. We don't have a budget proposal. And I think that's also a very important point to bring up. We, as we've been advocating for this episode, we really need to sort of pace ourselves, okay? It's week 3. We will have so much to push back against when Republicans unveil their budget and tax plans. I guarantee it. If you are listening to this podcast, take that to the bank. We already know from leaked reports and journalists who are sharing information what some of the things that the Republicans are proposing in their tax plan. They want to cut trillions of dollars in spending. They're going after benefits and services. They're trying to raise taxes on the middle class. We've seen reports that they want to take away the mortgage interest deduction, which millions of homeowners use every year. They want to take away the child tax credit. These are all things Democrats can and will push back on. The Republicans need to release their plan first. So just let's all just take a deep breath and give it a minute, okay? Let's give it a minute. There will be so much pushback. If the president ignores the judicial orders telling him to like unfreeze funds, we'll have even more standing to push back on the constitutional crisis argument and use that to, bring up impeachment, let's say, if that's what people want. But we honestly have to pace ourselves. It's week 3.
I agree. Some of these folks seem to just like want the drama and they're not like really just looking at the substance. Sure, we don't want Trump to confirm all these like horrible people, but
yes,
at the end of the day, before Trump, and actually let me go back all the way back, before Obama and before the obstructionist sort of ideology of Republicans, the president was usually trusted to pick whoever he wants to his or her cabinet. Well, his, because it's only ever been his cabinet, right? So like that part is, it's terrible, I know, but as you have said, like the actual budget is what affects your day-to-day life in your own home. And again, if you guys have said, which is what a lot of voters said, like the 4 years during Trump was just like, we were just overwhelmed, like we didn't know what was important or not. Well, now Democrats are trying to like give you what is important. They're actually trying to wait for the big budget, which affects all of Americans, not just like chasing after the big, shiny controversy week after week.
Yeah, agreed. And we'll see, right? Maybe this will all be nothing in another month because, as we said, there will be a tax and budget plan. It's going to be as 1% friendly as you can imagine. So we'll see when it comes out. Speaking of budgeting and taxing people, which is not a great segue, but we're going to move on anyway because I want to talk about this very important issue, which is breakfast and the price of eggs. We out here in the podcast are only 50% in support of eggs. So Olu is not team breakfast. Let me correct myself. She's not team egg breakfast, but I am. And I am now existing in a world where my local grocery stores are rationing eggs. It really feels like 2020 all over again. And today an inflation report came out saying inflation was increasing again and back up to 3%. Which obviously is not good news for the Trump administration, which is why they're now blaming Biden for that. But you can't deny that some of their policies and announcements have been inflationary. And we know corporate America is going to use every opportunity to raise prices. You don't need to tell them twice. And so now we see inflation is ticking back up. How do we feel about this? Sort of eggs aside, because we mentioned at the beginning, it's also bacon. Things that people enjoy are going back up in price. How do we feel about this?
Yes, I mean, like a typical MAGA voter, I am now personally involved because bacon is also going up.
When they came for the eggs, you were fine. But now they're here for the bacon.
Bacon is where I draw the line. I was told that he was going after only egg people. I did not know that bacon was coming as well.
That's terrible.
But yeah, I mean, Waffle House has like a surcharge for like pancakes and things with eggs now. That is insane. Like,
yeah,
IHOP is my jam. Like,
yes, love the
surcharge
IHOP
now
pancakes.
if I go to Waffle House or IHOP. This is not the America I was promised.
No, I love the IHOP, the harvest grain and nut pancakes. I actually learned how to make those at home because I'm a massive fan of those pancakes. And I agree, it's not fair. It's not right. How will we survive in this situation? He did campaign very heavily on the price of food. That was he had that we posted it on TikTok. He had the whole press conference where he brought out a bunch of grocery items and talked about how they had all gone up in price and everything was horrible as a result. And now it's still increasing and, even gas prices are going back up and we're not going to do anything about it. Instead he's going to stop us from using paper straws, which, okay, fine. Those are bad. But what about the eggs?
So I find that you brought up paper straws very funny because I went over to Reddit's conservative subreddit.
Oh, r/conservative. Yes.
And these people were complaining about him bringing back the plastic straws because they were like, well, a lot of us are farmers and we use rivers and streams for whatever, for, our crops. Not whatever, this is an important point.
What? Okay.
And that most rural people actually live in areas that need conservation. So bringing plastic back is a bad idea. And let me tell you, I was shook because I was
That's hilarious.
This is so funny because
are you sure you were on r/conservative?
Well, maybe these are not real conservatives. Maybe it's just liberals lapping as conservatives. So I was just but what were you guys then thinking when he said he was going to dismantle the EPA? Did you think your pure rolling hills were just gonna stay intact without climate protection? The cognitive dissonance is just doing my head in. Everybody is just oh, this particular thing actually affects me now, so this is why it's a bad idea. And there's just no willingness to think beyond what affects me in my own backyard.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what's been happening, right? With Project 2025, it was very clear they being conservatives were going to go after USAID. And now it turns out USAID wasn't just sending condoms to Gaza, Mozambique, not Gaza, in the Middle East. It turns out they were doing other things like buying grain from American farmers. And now those farmers are out, sometimes very large percentages of their income for the year because USAID funding is frozen. And now there's nobody to buy the grain that they've planted, harvested in preparation for these contracts. So, it really is a case of like, until it directly affects people, they're not going to pay attention or they don't care. And you can only warn people so much, right? They have to find out themselves. And that's what's happening. So with eggs, I personally did not support this. I know we know why the egg prices are high, but the important part of this conversation is that it's not just eggs. Overall, breakfast prices are up. Overall, grocery prices are up 0.5% from last month. And even though it's not as bad as it was in 2022 when it was at peak inflation, these price increases don't look like they're going to slow down. And then to make matters worse, it doesn't look like Trump's policies will make inflation any better. So, for example, he's pushing the Fed to lower interest rates. That's the kind of thing that causes inflation. Why would we, with increasing inflation, lower interest rates at this point? That doesn't make any sense, but that's what he wants to happen. And I guess we'll see if the Fed holds the line, right? It seems to me like we're heading for a not great time economically. And the eggs and the breakfast prices going up are sort of the canary in the coal mine, so to speak. So next time you go to Waffle House, next time you go to IHOP and stuff is a little bit more expensive. Next time you see a story about someone stealing eggs, these are like warning signs that we're not heading for a good time economically if Trump continues on this path.
Exactly. And as you said, like, the solutions being offered from Trump's White House and even from his business cronies and his business oligarchs are complete nonsense. If you make everybody return to work 5 days a week, guess what? The demand on gas is going to go up and the price of gas is going to go up again. Like, this is literally, I took one economics class in like more than 10 years ago now.
Centuries ago.
Even I know, like, this is just like a basic result of increasing demand on something, right? Like, so what is the long-term plan here? There seems to be no plan except for this vague returning to the old times sort of thing, which is not a goal. That is not a goal. That's a feeling. That's a vibe. There's a vibe that there was a time when things were better, and that was when we were all on the roads, yelling at each other in traffic. Is that when it was better? I don't understand.
I don't know. But we're all here, and we'll see, right? I think that's the good thing is, at least for now, we can still have news, people who are inside the system telling us what's going on. We still have information. We still kind of know what's happening, not as much as we should. And on that point around like understanding what the government is doing, I thought it was fascinating yesterday that Elon had this press conference. Well, I'm sorry, let me correct myself because that's actually the funny part. Technically, it wasn't Elon's press conference, but it turned into Elon's press conference with Trump just sitting there looking like some type of assistant while the boss talked, because as we said, Trump is president, but Elon is the CEO. And the CEO gave a press conference after taking over the president's press conference and told all of us that he's being very transparent about all the stuff that DOGE is doing, which is not true, because what they're doing is they will tweet out things that they've done in government, and most of it is BS. Some of it looks transparent. They'll say something like, we saved $100 million by cutting 60 contracts, one of which was, a contract to study bees in Madagascar, which, you think to yourself, why are we studying bees in Madagascar? That's crazy. But that's one of the 60 contracts. We don't know what the other 59 contracts are that they canceled. And we will only find out when, I don't know, farmers don't get paid for their grain. That's what's happening.
You raise a great point, right? When it's like these numbers are being thrown out, and I guess $50 million in condoms to Gaza or Mozambique sounds like a really big number. But like according to SpaceX's CEO, SpaceX has about $22 billion in government contracts, right? Like this is what is frustrating to me about the voters and the people who see that news. And then they're like, oh, well, that's government waste. Why are we spending $50 million to prevent HIV and AIDS from, spreading in this small African country, somewhere that I don't care about? And it's like, okay, well, in where you live and where you actually care about, somebody's getting $22 billion in contracts. Like, what do you think about that, right? Like, why are we so prone to allowing like hate and sort of a sense of, well, we don't care about those people, just push us in a direction where we're not asking further questions? Because everything needs a context. Everything is happening in the context of a larger thing. And if you're annoyed that people somewhere are getting like a clinical trial for malaria in Africa because you don't care about those people, well, what about the billionaires like right in front of you? Do you care about that?
The answer is no, right? Because when Republicans and conservatives do stuff, it's totally fine. When Democrats do something, it's government waste. It's a waste of time. And it's always government waste until it affects you personally. And I don't know if we're going to get around that as a country. That seems to me to be the way people vote these days. The real problem, though, I think, or another problem is when you try to warn people, your stuff gets discounted. Your perspective, your warning gets discounted because it's coming from, quote, liberal sources. If you're not going to listen to warnings, then we just have to, we're just going to have to let you experience it and see how it goes. But I want us to talk about something less depressing. So, Olu, I know we are not going to always talk about politics on the podcast. So I did want to bring up something something else, something less depressing, something a little more fun, Some people have called it the bread and circuses to keep us occupied. I personally enjoyed my time on Sunday watching the Super Bowl. I don't know about you. I assume you're not a Chiefs fan.
No.
So you were okay with the outcome.
No, and, not to bring it back to politics, but like Trump was there. So I was just like, hell no, I
Oh
didn't
my
watch it.
gosh, he didn't even stay for the whole game. He left like halfway through. He picked the Chiefs to win. Which if you're not familiar with who the Kansas City Chiefs are, because you don't watch football like I do, Kansas City Chiefs have won multiple Super Bowls, 2 in a row. They were trying to go for a third one this year. And thank God the Eagles stopped them from winning and stopped them from winning in spectacular fashion. It was a complete beatdown. The other thing that was interesting was the Chiefs team is the team that Harrison Butker is the kicker for. You may remember him from last year where he made this comment about at the college graduation about women being in the kitchen or whatever. People got very upset. So that team lost, and it lost. Harrison didn't even spend any time on the field on Sunday, which I found especially poetic. I guess that was #God's plan. So their team lost really badly. Trump was there, but he only stayed for half the game, picked the Chiefs to win. They didn't. It was a complete ass whooping by halftime, and so he left. He abandoned his team that he chose, left them there, and went home. So that was the game. But the halftime performance has gotten a lot of coverage for multiple reasons. And one of the reasons was Kendrick Lamar invited Serena Williams up to do a little dance while she was on stage with him. It was literally like 10, 15 seconds of, a 15-minute performance. It wasn't that much time, but it got a lot of coverage for multiple reasons. And I know, Olu, you saw some of the coverage, even though you didn't watch the game.
Yes, I saw the headlines about Serena, so because that affects me, which is just a theme
Because you're a
these days,
fan.
'cause I'm a fan. I actually did click on that. Um, and I've seen like gifs and whatever of her doing. It was like her
The
prior
crip walk.
victory dance
Hmm.
from one of the Grand Slams. So it seemed cute. It was just like she was having fun. I don't know what the problem is.
What? Okay, hold on. Do you not know what the dance is called?
Well, it's a creep walk, yes, I do
Yes.
know. But like at this
Okay.
point, I don't know, like this is not like, the 1990s. She's just having fun. Like
I
she's not like
agree.
a gang member.
I agree 1,000%. People kept bringing up, I saw a lot of comments online of people saying, why is she doing a crip walk when her sister was murdered by a member of that gang? And I just thought to myself, it's 2025. At this point, the crip walk is a dance. I don't think it's an
Oh, so
endorsement of gang
didn't
violence.
Snoop Dogg just do a crip walk like last year when he was on with Dre
Yeah, but his
oh,
sister wasn't murdered by one. That's the argument people are having. And
I don't know,
I
just the
just I
same.
find it to be silly, quite honestly. It's at this point, especially if she's doing it on that stage, it's a dance. It's not an endorsement of gang violence. She hasn't joined the group. She's just doing a dance and it's a callback to something she did like 13 years ago or something when
Yeah.
she was at Wimbledon. She won, she beat Sharapova and she did that dance, being from Compton, being from LA, which is where the dance is from, and people gave her so much shit for it. And so it was just a callback to that, She's like, I'm going to be here on this stage, one of the world's biggest athletes, one of the world's biggest black athletes, doing a dance. I didn't see anything else. The thing that I did see, which I thought was hilarious, was the shade to Drake as part of that performance. Um,
Oh, right, because
yeah,
she's Drake's ex.
because she's Drake's ex, and because Drake said things about her husband, her current husband, Alexis Ohanian. He called Alexis a groupie, unprovoked, because Drake does that in his song lyrics. He goes after people, he especially goes after women or his exes, and like sort of calls them out in ways. And he made a song where he called Alexis Ohanian a groupie like 2 or 3 years ago. And so I thought it was funny that, Serena Williams got to have the last laugh on like the world's biggest stage. I thought that was cool.
Exactly. I mean, I saw all the reactions to Kendrick's performance, and this seems like, I don't know, Jennifer Aniston versus Angelina Jolie. Like
What?
this is this is just like a cultural moment where people are picking sides. Like it's not that deep, right? Like it's fine, because I feel like some of the reactions to Serena was like, oh, how does her husband feel about her? Like still creep walking because of her ex. It means that she hasn't gotten over her ex. It's just like, calm down. These are all famous people having some kind of tiff. It's just for your entertainment. Like, I feel like, as always, people are taking fandom like way too deep, way too far, and getting into unnecessary fights and arguments for no reason.
Yeah, I mean, so the thing you're talking about with Serena Williams, that was Stephen A. Smith. For those of you who don't know, Stephen A. Smith is a sports commentator in the U.S., and he has occasionally delved into politics. We usually don't agree with his opinion. He says some wild things sometimes, even outside of politics. As a sports commentator, he says some wild things, and he can be provocative. But he did make a statement about Serena Williams where he said, if he were her husband, he would say, why is she up there trolling her ex? If he's married to her, he would divorce her because why would she be worried about her ex? And
Which
it was so dumb. Like, it's, first of all, it's funny. Like, I don't understand why it needs this much analysis. But to say you would divorce your wife, it was like, okay, well, good thing you're not married to her then, she'll be fine.
it's just like the audacity of men, right? Like, hello, she is not your wife, and you don't have to think about every woman in the concept of if she is your wife. Like, can we stop all of that nonsense? What do you mean if she were your wife? From what angle to what angle? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
Right?
that's true. That's true. And it is the audacity of men that led to, in part, Serena being on that stage. If Drake hadn't said anything about her husband, we wouldn't be here in this situation. So, like, I guess the message is do less, men. Do less. Do less.
Exactly, but it was certainly entertaining to like see all the reactions and all the back and forth about it. So I'm glad people have something to take their minds off of
I
what's
agree.
going on.
I agree. It was a good Sunday, and I think it was a good Sunday for me personally. Even though I know we talked about this in the group chat, even though I don't support either team, none of those are my team in the NFL, and I do watch football, so I'm a fan. But as a football fan, it was good to see, first of all, an interesting Super Bowl because last year was lame and boring, an interesting halftime show because last year was good. It was Rihanna, she was great, but this year felt like a cultural moment in more ways than last year, which I loved. And it's also the most viewed halftime show. The Super Bowl overall had about 126 million viewers, but the halftime show had 133 million viewers. So 7 million more people tuned in just for Kendrick and then went about their day. So it was a good moment. It was a good distraction. I know they're like, these highbrow, like liberal people who are like so upset that it's distracting, but we cannot be in the Trump bullshit
I agree.
all day, every day. We gotta get our fun in where we can. And I, for one, was very happy. And I'm happy for everyone. I'm happy for SZA. I'm happy for Serena. I'm happy for Kendrick. I'm happy for the dancers, who you'll notice were all black. Some people had an issue with that.
I mean,
And
all the worst people had an
all the
issue.
worst people had an issue with that. And I thought to myself, so they are advocates for DEI. They did want DEI. And my response to that is, well, all those
Suddenly,
dancers.
representation matters.
Exactly. I was going to say, if you have a problem with all black dancers at the Super Bowl, just know that those dancers were chosen on merit only. And that's why. Okay? Don't even worry about it. Okay. It was a good moment. It was a good moment. I'm sorry if I enjoyed the Super Bowl, guys. I know it's like, we should be upset. I'm not. It was a good weekend.
But essentially, that is our message. Find things that bring you joy, that bring you some respite, like things that are not, harmful, obviously, but like it's just a fun time, And this is actually, let me go back to my little pet peeve that I've always had. Like, I do not want to hear from like any man anymore that, watching Real Housewives is like, the worst thing you can do. Because it
Oh
seems
my
to
God,
me,
who still says that? That's
because
lame. Lots of
exactly.
men watch Real Housewives. Lots and lots of men. I personally know people who watch Real Housewives that are straight, extremely straight men.
But
So,
you
no.
know how things that women like watch sometimes can be like looked down upon as, oh, you just like gossip or drama. But I'm literally seeing men doing dissertations about Drake versus Kendrick, and I'm like, how is this different? How?
No, it's not. Or what about the previous week where the big thing was the Luka trade to the Lakers and
Oh
people were
yeah,
flipping out. Like, find your joy, guys. We're not going to be mad at you, and then don't get mad at us when we find ours. It's okay.
exactly. Like, enjoy your guilty pleasures. Actually, remove guilty from it. Just enjoy your pleasures and like don't yuck other people's yum when it's like their turn.
Agreed. Agreed. And I think that's a great place to end the podcast this week.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode. We have been Olu and Liz. Please do join us next week. As usual, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and liberbatter.com, where you can also shop some merch. See you next week. Bye-bye now.